Have you ever wondered why the system is so desperate for you to look successful before you actually are? Why is it that the moment you earn your first significant paycheck, a dozen different industries appear, ready to trade you a temporary feeling of status for 30 years of your future freedom? Most people walk into these traps with a smile on their face, thinking they've finally arrived. In reality, they've just signed the papers on their own economic imprisonment. You are being watched, not by a person, but by a mathematical architecture that thrives on your desire for comfort. If you follow the traditional path, buying the house you're supposed to own, the car that reflects your position, and the luxuries that reward your hard work, you are making a bet. You are betting that the world will stay exactly as it is for the next 30 years. But look around you. Does this feel like a world that is standing still? I have seen cycles that would make your head spin. I've seen the safe investments of one decade become the punchlines of the next. And right now, I see a generation of people in the USA, the UK, and Australia who are being lured into buying 4 specific things that will effectively end their chances of becoming wealthy in the age of AI. They think they are building a foundation. They are actually building a ceiling. You need to ask yourself, are you buying things to own them? Or are you buying them so the system can own you? I'm going to reveal the 4 specific anchors, the trap of idle cash, that you must avoid if you want to reach escape velocity. This isn't a lecture on saving pennies. It's a warning about the structural erosion of your life's potential. If you stay until the end, you will understand why the dream you've been sold is the very thing keeping you awake at night. If you want to see the system for what it truly is, stay with me. The first thing you must understand is that the system is not broken. It is working perfectly, but it is not working for you. It is designed to harvest your productivity and convert it into someone else's compounding interest. To do this, it uses 4 primary anchors that are disguised as rewards. When you reach for them, you think you are winning. But from where I sit, I see someone voluntarily walking into a magnetic field that will paralyze their ability to move for the next 20 years. The first anchor is the automobile. In the USA, the UK, and Australia, we have a cultural obsession with the car as a symbol of identity. But let's look at the physics of it. A car is a rapidly depreciating machine that requires a high-interest loan, constant maintenance, and expensive energy to operate. When you buy a luxury car early in your life, you are not just losing the $80,000 or $100,000 the car costs. You are losing the opportunity cost of that capital. If that money were placed in the path of the technological revolution we are currently living through, the shift to accelerated computing and digital intelligence, it could be worth 10 or 20 times its value in a decade. You are trading a future fortune for a seat made of dead cow skin that will be worth half its price in 3 years. This is a mathematical crime against your own future. The second anchor, and perhaps the most controversial, is the primary residence. You have been told that a house is your greatest investment. This is the ultimate middle-class lie. A house that you live in is not an asset. It is a liability that takes money out of your pocket every single month. It is a massive, illiquid concentration of your net worth in a single geographic coordinate. In an era where the economy is shifting from physical to digital, being anchored to a 30-year mortgage is a strategic disaster. It prevents you from moving to where the opportunities are. It forces you to stay in a job you may hate just to service the debt. The billionaire doesn't want you to be liquid. The system wants you to be tied to a patch of dirt so you remain a predictable, tax-paying participant in the local economy. Then there is the third anchor, luxury signaling. This is the siren song of the insecure. It is the designer watch, the high-end clothes, the expensive dinners that exist only to be photographed. People buy these things because they have a deep-seated fear of being seen as lesser. They want to look like they've made it before they've actually built anything of substance. This is status anxiety. It is the pursuit of a feeling that lasts for an hour, paid for with hours of labor you will never get back. I have seen people with millions in the bank who dress in simple clothes and drive 10-year-old cars because they don't need the world to validate their wealth. They know that true status isn't what you wear, it's what you own and what you control. The fourth anchor is the most subtle, the trap of idle cash. Many people think they are being safe by keeping their money in a savings account. They see the balance and feel secure. But cash is a melting ice cube. We have seen inflation levels in the last few years that have quietly stolen 10 to 20% of the purchasing power of people in the West. If you are sitting on cash, you are not saving. You are being liquidated by the system. The central banks need you to hold cash so they can inflate away the government's debt at your expense. Unless your capital is deployed into productive, growing assets, you are losing the race while standing still. Think of these four things as a weather system. Inflation is the tide, debt is the gravity, and these four anchors are the weights you've tied to your own neck. In the 1970s, or even the 1990s, you might have been able to survive while carrying one or two of these. But today, the cycles are moving too fast. In 2008, we saw what happened to the people who were over-leveraged on their homes. Today, we are seeing the beginning of a shift where intelligence is the new currency. If your currency is locked in a garage, a mortgage, or a designer closet, you are effectively opting out of the greatest wealth creation event in history. Wealth moves toward productivity. It moves toward the things that make the world more efficient. It does not move toward the person with the newest car or the biggest house. It moves toward the person who has the liquidity to see an opportunity and the courage to seize it. If you have a friend or a family member who is about to sign a 30-year commitment or buy a vehicle they don't need, share this perspective with them. It is an act of kindness to wake someone up before they walk into the fog. When I look at the landscape of the global economy, I don't see a collection of products. I see a massive, shifting flow of energy and intelligence. Wealth is not a static pool that you sit in. It is a current. To get rich early, you must understand that the four anchors I mentioned, the car, the house, the luxury signaling, and the idle cash, are actually dams. They block the flow of capital into your life and redirect it back into the institutions that sold them to you. Let's look at the movement of an asset like a high-end vehicle through the lens of physics. The moment you drive that car off the lot, you have committed an act of capital destruction. You have taken highly organized mobile energy, your money, and turned it into a heavy, rusting object that loses value every time the sun rises. Most people in the USA and the UK spend the first 4 hours of every workday just to pay for the metal box that sits in the parking lot while they work. This is the definition of insanity. You are working for the machine, rather than making the machine work for you. Now compare that to the movement of wealth in the digital age. We are currently in the midst of a tectonic shift. For the last century, wealth was tied to land and labor. Today, wealth is tied to compute and compounding. When you choose not to buy that $60,000 car and instead place that capital into the companies that are building the brains of the future, the AI, the chips, the infrastructure, you are not just saving, you are buying a piece of the most powerful productivity engine ever created. You are moving from the side of the consumer, who pays for the output, to the side of the owner, who collects the rent on the future. There is a psychological weight to ownership that most people ignore. This is what I call status anxiety. In Australia or the UK, there is a massive cultural pressure to get on the property ladder. People treat it like a religion. But look at the math of a house in a high-interest environment. Between the interest, the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance, you are often paying double the price of the home over 30 years. And for what? For the privilege of being stuck? Wealth moves toward those who are agile. If a major technological shift happens in Silicon Valley or London or Tokyo, and you are locked into a mortgage in a city with no growth, you have lost your most valuable asset, your mobility. You must realize that the system rewards concentration, not diversification of your lifestyle. If you want to get rich early, you cannot afford to have your wealth scattered across 4 different depreciating categories. You must concentrate your capital where it can grow at a geometric rate. This is how the billionaires you see today actually built their foundations. They didn't start by buying the mansion. They lived in the office, they drove the old car, and they poured every single unit of capital back into the engine. They understood that $1 spent on a luxury today is worth $100 of freedom tomorrow. I want you to think about the regret of inaction. There is a deep, quiet pain in realizing 10 years from now that you spent the most transformative decade of human history paying for a kitchen renovation or a car lease while the world was being rewritten by intelligence. The opportunity cost of looking rich is the reality of being rich. The math is simple, but the discipline is hard. You are fighting against your own biology, which wants you to fit in and signal your status to the tribe. But the tribe is broke. Following them will only lead you to where they are. Stay engaged with this idea because the next step is understanding the quote-unquote hard truths. Most people will hear this and say, "But I need a place to live," or "I need to get to work." Of course you do. But you do not need the version of those things that the system has marketed to you. You do not need the version that consumes 50% of your income. If you can lower your overhead to the absolute minimum, you create a quote-unquote spread. That spread is your fuel. Without it, you are just a passenger on someone else's journey. I want you to save this video. Rewatch this section the next time you feel the urge to quote-unquote upgrade your life. Ask yourself, is this purchase moving me closer to the center of the wealth flow, or is it just another anchor? If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you have to be willing to look like you're behind it for a little while. That is the secret the system doesn't want you to know. There is a specific kind of internal resistance you are feeling right now. You are likely searching for an excuse. You are thinking about why your situation is different, or why that house in the suburbs is a special case, or why a reliable car requires a massive monthly payment. This is the comfort of the crowd calling you back. The hardest truth you must face is this: the traditional path is a blueprint for mediocrity. If you want what everyone else has, do what everyone else does. But if you want the life of the 1%, you must be willing to be misunderstood by the 99%. Let's dismantle the myth of cash safety once and for all. In the UK, Australia, and the US, we have been conditioned to believe that a growing number in a savings account equals security. It does not. In a world of debt-based currency, your savings account is a charity donation to the bank. They take your cash, lend it out at a higher rate, and leave you with a balance that buys less bread and less energy every single year. Holding idle cash is not a strategy. It is a slow-motion surrender. You are essentially holding a ticket for a ship that has already sailed. If your money isn't working as hard as you are losing the game. Then there is the trap of blind diversification. Financial advisors love to tell you to spread your money thin, a little in index funds, a little in bonds, a little in real estate. This is advice for people who have already won and simply want to stay rich. But if you are trying to get rich early, diversification is often a hedge against your own ignorance. It ensures that you will never be completely wiped out, but it also ensures you will never truly move the needle. Real wealth is built through concentration and conviction. It is built by identifying the one or two massive shifts, like the transition to a global AI infrastructure, and having the discipline to ignore everything else. The boat you are currently in is likely tied to a sinking dock. That dock is the quote-unquote lifestyle you think you need. Every time you upgrade your phone, your car, or your apartment, you are tightening the knot. You think you are buying insurance against a boring life, but you are actually buying a life where you can never afford to take a risk. I have seen the most talented people I know turn down life-changing opportunities because they couldn't afford a single month without a paycheck. They were successful by society's standards, but they were actually hostages. Their assets owned them. You must accept that for a period of time, you will look like you are failing. You will drive the older car while your friends lease the new one. You will rent a small space while your peers take on massive mortgages. You will wear the same simple clothes while others chase the seasonal trends. This is the price of admission. You are buying your, quote, optionality. When the market crashes, or when a new technology disrupts an entire industry, the person with the big mortgage and the car payment will panic. But the person who avoided the 4 anchors will see it as a fire sale. They will have the liquidity to buy the world while it is on discount. This is the insurance you hope never to use. By avoiding these 4 traps, you are insuring yourself against the volatility of the future. You are building a base of capital that gives you the right to say no. No to a toxic boss. no to a stagnant city, and no to a system that wants to keep you on the treadmill. Most people will never know that feeling. They will spend their entire lives hoping that the economy stays stable, just so they can keep making their payments. That is not living. That is surviving under a shadow of debt. I want you to do an honest self-assessment. Look at your bank statement from the last 90 days. How much of that money went toward the four anchors? How much went towards signaling a status you haven't yet secured? Be honest with yourself. It is uncomfortable, but it is the only way to break the cycle. If you are willing to face these hard truths, you are ready for the final shift in perspective. You are ready to see the long view. We have reached the moment where the logic meets the road. You now understand the four anchors: the car, the house, the luxury signaling, and the melting ice cube of idle cash. But knowing these traps exist is not the same as having the strength to walk around them. This is where the separation happens. This is the difference between those who watch the world change and those who own the change. I want you to imagine two versions of yourself 20 years from today. The first version followed the script. You bought the right house in the right suburb, you drove a series of beautiful cars that are now in a junkyard, and you wore the brands that were popular in 2025. You worked hard, you paid your interest, and you are now nearing the end of your productive years with a modest retirement account and a house that is too big for you. You were a good citizen of the system. You did exactly what you were told, and you ended up exactly where the system intended: tired, stagnant, and dependent. Now imagine the second version. This version of you understood the physics of wealth. You lived in a modest rental while your peers signed 30-year sentences. You drove a reliable, boring vehicle until the wheels fell off. You ignored the status games, and you funneled every spare unit of capital into the great technological engines of our time. While the world was distracted by the surface, you were building a foundation of intelligence and compounding assets. Today, 20 years later, you don't just have money, you have absolute sovereignty. You own your time. You own your location. You are the one who provides the capital that others work for. The choice between these two lives is made in the next 5 minutes. It is made the next time you feel the urge to, quote, reward yourself for a hard week by spending money you should be investing. It is made when you decide that your future freedom is more important than your neighbor's opinion of your driveway. Getting rich early is not an act of greed. It is an act of rebellion. It is a refusal to let your life be harvested by a system that prioritizes consumption over creation. I want you to look at the world with a sense of calm authority. The panic that drives people to buy things they don't need comes from a place of scarcity. But when you understand the long cycle patterns of wealth, you realize that there is an abundance of opportunity for those who are liquid and prepared. We are moving into the most transformative era in human history. The age of intelligence will create more wealth in the next decade than was created in the last century. But that wealth will only flow to those who have their hands free to catch it. If your hands are full of car keys and mortgage papers, you will miss it. This is the long view. It is not about deprivation. It is about deferred gratification for the sake of total dominance over your own life. Do not chase the trends. Do not chase the hype. Build your engine. Accumulate your units of freedom. And when the rest of the world is forced to react to the changing tides, you will be the one who already moved to high ground. If this perspective has given you the clarity you were looking for, then stay informed. Subscribe to the discipline of long-term thinking, not the noise of short-term greed. The system is designed to distract you. Your job is to remain focused. The world is changing faster than ever, and the map is being rewritten as we speak. Make sure you are the one holding the pen. Stay curious, stay focused, and most importantly, stay free.